Hey y'all, it's Dr. Know-It-All. Today, let's talk about iPhone. I currently have an iPhone 16. It is this nice salmon color. People have given me heck about that all year. I actually really like the color. People say it's too femmy. I don't know why. But anyway, I want to talk about the iPhone 17 because it's come out in 3 new versions, including the iPhone Air. And normally I purchase a new iPhone every year just by rote because it's my workhorse when I travel. If I go to a conference, if I go to X Takeover, if I go anywhere, even if I'm doing full self-driving recordings, I'm recording it on my iPhone, and therefore it's a workhorse machine for me and very, very necessary. This year, however, as I've noted previously on my other YouTube videos, my channel has actually gone down in viewership and revenue by about 10x from what it normally was. So this year it's a much bigger decision for me to make because normally it was been like, okay, fine, kind of a loss leader, I make X amount of money and I'll spend $1,300 or $1,400 on the iPhone plus a case, plus Apple Care, plus all of that kind of stuff. This year, that is a much bigger nut to choose. So I'll let you know by the end whether I purchased a new iPhone or whether I decided to stick with my current one. Anyway, you can also see that iPhone 16 is still available, but not the iPhone 16 Pro. So you can't order this from Apple anymore. You can, of course, I'm sure, find it at Verizon or T-Mobile or any number of other places because I'm sure they still have quite a bit of stock out there. Also, as a quick side note here, Apple, good God, why do you guys have a white background on your iPhone? Why not have this be dark mode? Everything else on my desktop, everything is dark mode. And when I bring this up, it just screams at me. It's just like, it's very, very white. So anyway, I don't know what the problem is. I don't know why they can't make a dark mode version of this web page for folks that want to have dark mode on, but such is life. So anyway, I'm going to go through the iPhone 17 relatively quickly. Then I'm going to look at the Air because that is brand new. And then I'm going to finish up with the Pro model. So first, the iPhone 17, it's of course apparently magic chromatic. It has a lot of pastel colors for the phone itself. That's interesting, but I don't particularly care about all of that kind of stuff. One of the big things, however, is that the screen on the iPhone is now up to the standard of the Pro models and the Air as well. All of them are 3000 nits of brightness and up to 120 hertz. So that's rather remarkable. I think that's pretty impressive. In addition, the iPhone 17 gets something that the iPhone 17 Pro and I think the Air as well get, which is an 18 megapixel center stage front camera. It's a square camera instead of a rectangular one so that you don't have to make a decision ahead of time which way to flip your phone. It records enough and it actually apparently zooms in. Again, we don't have these things. They're not available until the end of this week, but apparently it kind of figures it out for you as you just hold the phone up. It figures out what the right framing is. Now, hopefully you can turn that off because I might find that to be very annoying. I would personally prefer to just record in the raw, square version of it and then make a decision in post if I'm going to post process something. If it's just a quick selfie video, then obviously I'll let it decide. But I hope that I can disable that so I can make decisions in post processing how I want to do that. Anyway, note that there are 2 cameras on the back as opposed to 1 or 3 or anything like that. That's the whole new differentiator. It's a 48 megapixel rear camera, so you get 2 of those now, so that's rather impressive. And you get 256 gigabytes of standard storage on the iPhone 17. So that is a big upgrade from the 128 that is standard. So all in all, starting at $800, this is actually a really good deal, and you can just get the base model. I don't think you need to upgrade the storage at all. I think 256 gigs is fine for almost everybody, including me. I mean, I use this thing professionally, like I said, and I still only use 256 gig of storage because what I do is I have the Apple iCloud account and I back everything up to that. And basically for the large amount of storage, it's $30 a month, which ends up coming out to about $360 a year, which means it's around the same cost as doing the memory upgrade, maybe double the memory upgrade, and I get the advantage of having everything backed up. So it's a no-brainer. So I just get the base model. It has plenty of storage for the apps that I run on it, and it has plenty for everything that I do every day. If I ever run out, then I'll have to upgrade. Back in the old days when it was like 64 gigabytes was the standard or something, I would always have to upgrade to 128 or 256, but now I find that that is a perfectly adequate amount to have, so I can buy the base model. Alrighty, and on to the iPhone Air, the thinnest iPhone ever with the Power of Pro inside. Notice that this is $1,000, so it's $200 more expensive than the iPhone 17. That seems to me like not a great deal since you're only getting 1 camera here, and I can't imagine that the battery life is going to be as good. I don't know, maybe it will be. It does have the A19 Pro chip, but it is also a neutered version of it. It's got 1 fewer GPUs and doesn't seem to be quite as good as the Pro. So it's one of those things where I'm like, yeah, I don't particularly see the market for this. I think it's a fashion fashion forward market. I think it's one of those things, if you're just trying to make a statement and you pull that out of your pocket and you don't have a case on it and people are just like, holy mackerel, that thing is so thin, right? That's not at all what I would be using my phone for. So I would much rather have the more cameras. I'd much rather have the thicker phone with more battery and everything. But there will be a market for this. Interestingly enough, this has a titanium case while the new version of the Pro has aluminum. I think there are two reasons for this. Number one is that Apple probably can't supply or, refine enough titanium to do both models at the same time. That is a lot of titanium to have to get a hold of. It's a very rare mineral. And number two, the Pro now has kind of cooling channels. The aluminum might have a better heat capacity and stuff. We'll get to that in just a minute. Importantly, the Air does have that 3000 nits, 120 hertz screen. It has a slightly larger one. The iPhone 17 is 6.3 inches, if I remember. This is 6.5, so a very, very small amount bigger screen. But the screens are all the same brightness and the same hertz refresh rate, including the Pro models. So you really don't have to choose anymore based on the screen. It really comes down to other specs. So again, I guess that the market for this is the fashion forward market. It's not something that I particularly care about, but if it really matters to you to show off to your friends how thin your phone is, then there you go. Will this thing bend if you put too much stress on it? Yeah, it is quite possible. I also want to point out that in addition to the A19 Pro chip, which again is somewhat neutered from the Pro version of it, oh gosh, the A19 Pro chip with the iPhone 17 Pro, that's very confusing. There is a C1X modem, which is the way that the phone talks to the cell phone world out there. It is hyper efficient, so that may be one of the reasons why you can actually squeeze all day battery life out of such a small and very, very thin phone. And then weirdly enough, as if to admit that this thing doesn't have good enough battery, they actually have a battery bump that you can add to it. So it's like, get the thinnest phone, but then also get a battery that goes with it. It's crazy. Speaking of fashion forward stuff, they have this cross-body strap that you can get. Definitely not for me. But again, I think given the target market, what they're looking at as fashion forward folks, probably going to be folks in their 20s and things that want to sort of show off their cool fashion forwardness. Yeah, it's probably a reasonable accessory to have for that market, but something that I would never even consider using. It's going in my pocket. And that takes us to the iPhone 17 Pro, which of course is the model that would be the direct replacement to the 16 Pro. Weirdly enough, they actually went back to a black background for this. So the Pro model has the black background, but then if you click on buy the iPhone 17 Pro, it goes to this horrible whiteness again. So it's just terrible, terrible experience, guys. Just awful. By the way, I went through the ordering process again just to sort of see what the backlog is at this point. Notice that I could actually pick it up on Saturday, this Saturday, if I wanted to go to the Apple Mall of Georgia, but it will deliver September 30th to October 7th. I don't believe, this is the Pro model, of course, I don't believe that that speaks very well to the amount of demand, because there were times when if you waited this long, it's been 3 days since this model came out. Usually the pre-orders would back it up to on the order of, 3 to 4 weeks or something at this point. So now we're only talking about the 19th is the original release date, and you're only looking at, a couple of weeks past that. So there is demand, but it's probably not as good as Apple wishes it was. That would be my guess, just looking at this delivery date. But back to the 17 Pro, you can see it still has the 3 cameras. It's got an aluminum unibody now as opposed to titanium previously. And the highlights are, of course, you've got the aluminum unibody design. And then, of course, you've got the A19 Pro vapor cooled for lightning fast performance. Let me go back to that because it kind of plays quickly here. So we can look at this. You can see that what it has is channels built into the back. It's very, very quick, unfortunately, but it cools itself. It's got an air-cooled system, vapor-cooled, whatever. It's air-cooled, but there's a way of drawing the air through the chassis of the iPhone that allows it to stay cooler. That should allow this version of the A19 Pro, which again has one more GPU and probably will stay clocked up at a much higher rate than the iPhone Air. It will allow it to operate much cooler, which means it will stay closer to its maximum capacity for longer, and I'm hoping it will actually charge cooler too, because MagSafe charging on the iPhone 16 it's just so hot on the thing. So hopefully they've figured out some way around that and make it a little bit cooler. Next up, of course, is the most important feature for me, which is that they have 3 48 megapixel rear cameras, and it allows optical zoom of 0.5 to 8x. So that is a massive range of optical zoom. That is really, really impressive. That's the kind of feature that matters to me because it allows such a range of being able to film at all of these different zoom levels without having to go into the digital realm, which causes it to get chunky and nasty looking. And then of course we've got the front camera, which does the square. It's basically a square thing instead of a rectangular one, so you don't have to make a decision. You can hold the phone up any way you want to and it will figure it out. And as you can see, it auto stages that. I hope that Apple can disable this so you can decide later in post, because obviously if you're just doing a quick selfie thing, it's fine if it makes the staging decision, but I would prefer, if I'm going to be editing it later, to be able to record the full frame and then make a post-processing decision. I think you can. Speaking of post-processing, the 17 Pro and Pro Max, of course, which is the bigger cousin of the Pro, allows you to record in ProRes 422, which is Apple's uncompressed raw format. That means that you can make a huge amount of creative decisions later on. If you shoot with that and the cinematic mode, you could probably produce something that looks really indistinguishable from a very high-end camera at this point. That is very impressive. And then of course at the end they say Apple Intelligence, effortlessly helpful features from image creation to live translation. The live translation feature actually could be very useful, but the Apple Intelligence part of it, man, Apple has dropped the ball on that. If you haven't seen, I've done a couple of videos on this. I'll leave them up here and at the end of this video and in the description, because I think that Apple has a sort of dark horse way of coming from behind to victory, but I just don't know if the company is capable of doing that anymore, because they've become so stodgy. They seem to have been completely blindsided by this race to AI in the past 4 or 5 years. And if they don't do something quick, they're just going to be an also ran, and their stock price, the fact that their stock price has been depressed while everybody else in the area has been going up, indicates that investors understand that as well. But anyway, hopefully at some point we'll actually get some Apple Intelligence on these phones, and the 17 Pro will work somewhat better than the 16, which works better than the 15, etc. So I think the unibody case is actually very cool. I like this case. The fact that it's all one sort of solid construction means that it should be a very, very strong phone, although honestly I haven't had a phone bend or crack on me or anything like that in several years, so it may or may not matter. But again, I think the aluminum may have a better thermal profile, so it may release the heat better than titanium or other metals. And then of course we get to the colors. There is this bright sort of emergency orange. It looks very much like that on my Apple Watch. There's the orange color there. You've also got kind of a deep blue color, which is pretty standard fare. You've also got kind of a whitish color. There is no black or charcoal gray this time, so the closest you can get to that is a dark blue. So which one of these colors would you get if you were purchasing one? I will let you know my thoughts in just a second. We've also, as noted, have this vapor chamber, which allows the phone to dissipate heat much more quickly, which should allow it to operate at max capacity for longer and preserve the battery life as well, because as we all know, a hot battery is not a happy battery. And then noting again, we've got the button just like on the Air and on the 16 Pro, not my favorite feature because I just inadvertently use it all the time. And when I want to use it, for some reason, I always have to press it twice or something like that. So I find it to be very counterintuitive and doesn't work as well as I wish. If Apple could come up with a better use for it, it'd be great. But basically my sort of thing is I always pick up the phone from the bottom so as not to touch these top buttons. And because it's recessed, I'm just always pressing that button and inadvertently putting it into camera mode. So I am not a fan of that button at all. If you know how to disable it, let me know in the comments, or maybe switch it over to doing something else aside from invoking the camera. And just as a quick sort of note about how much zoom you can actually get, you can start at 200 millimeter and you can zoom all the way out to 13 millimeter. So that is pretty impressive that you can do all of that in the optical zoom range. And then the macro is super cool because of course that's really, really ultra close up. So very, very cool that you can go from this all the way to this, all with optical zoom. That is very, very impressive. And then as I noted, it actually uses Pro Video. So you get Apple ProRes 422 RAW, which is very, very impressive if you're trying to do anything that looks really cinematic. And then of course we get to the battery, which I hope is as good as what they're saying, all-time high battery. So it's got the best ever iPhone battery. It is a thick little beast. It'll be thicker than the iPhone 16 Pro, so that is interesting, but I will take that because all I really care about is more battery, more battery, more battery. So anyway, it supposedly has better battery, 33 hours of video playback on the 17 Pro, and up to 39 hours of video playback on the 17 Pro Max. So that's really amazing. 50% charge in 20 minutes. That also will be really, really important to be able to charge the phone up. You know, when you're doing one of those busy days, when I'm at a conference or something like that, the battery just drains really quickly, and to be able to just plug it in for 20 minutes and have it get back 50% of the battery, that would be pretty darn crucial. So in terms of usability, that's a fantastic feature. Alrighty folks, so those are the features of the iPhone 17 17, the iPhone Air, and the iPhone 17 Pro and Pro Max. So what do you think I should do about purchasing a new one? Is it enough of an upgrade for me, given the fact that it is a big expense at this point? Let me know in the comments. I will tell you in 3, 2, 1. Yes, I ended up purchasing a new one. I ended up getting the 17 Pro, not the Pro Max, because it just doesn't fit in my pocket particularly well. And that's the number one most important thing, because basically I've gotten rid of everything. I don't carry a wallet with me, generally speaking, anymore, because I have my driver's license on my phone. I don't carry keys anymore, except for rarely when I have to go into my office at work. That's the only place I actually need a key anymore. But aside from that, I don't carry keys with me anymore. So really, I just carry an iPhone. That's it. I unlock my Tesla with that. I use it to go to the gym and unlock the door there. It connects up with my AirPods. So it is the center of my life. It's the only thing I keep in my pocket. And so definitely it has to fit in my pocket. Which color did I choose? Out of all these crazy colors, I could have gotten blue and I could have gotten the white, but I ended up getting the orange because I don't know. I just sort of like the orange. I think it's very bold and it's making a statement. Speaking of fashion forward and making a statement, maybe that's me just being a little bit vain. I don't know how Misinformation will like that because she usually gets my old phones. So she may pass over this one and decide to keep this for an extra couple of years and give the other one to my son or somebody else like that. She may be like, nah, I don't really want that orange color, but we'll see. Maybe she'll come around to it as well. But overall, that was my decision. I got the stock model with 256 gigs of RAM, which by the way, for the Pro model, it really should be 512 by now. It's kind of ridiculous, but anyway, Apple is Apple. They really love to charge for that extra memory. But I got the base model for $1,100, and then I got the Apple protection because yeah, that's what I get because I'm slinging this thing around all the time and it matters a lot to me. And then of course with tax and all of that kind of stuff and a case, it ended up coming out to about $1,400. So not particularly inexpensive, but that's life and that's what I ended up doing. Alrighty folks, so let me know in the comments, what do you think? Should I have purchased this given how I use the phone? It is, like I said, it is my workhorse beast, except for when I'm recording videos right here. But of course it's really expensive and not necessarily something that I would absolutely need. And of course, I would be interested in knowing what you think about all of this. Did you purchase a new iPhone 17? If you did, how many versions of iPhone did you wait? Did you go from the 16 to the 17 or the 14 to the 17? If you do the 14 to the 17, that's probably a pretty substantial upgrade. Anyway, let me know in the comments. And while you're down there, if you don't mind liking the video, it really helps YouTube's algorithm. And of course, consider subscribing for more of this kind of content. And I will see you in the next video. Bye-bye.